Canada is about to make one of the most consequential defense purchases in its history. Within the next 30 days, Ottawa will choose between Germany's TKMS and South Korea's Hanwha as the preferred bidder for its patrol submarine project. Although both manufacturers won the mega billion-dollar contract, this project looks like a bigger prize for the South Koreans than the Germans. Why is that? Let's discuss it in today's video. The Canadian Patrol Submarine Project, or CPSP, is Ottawa's multi-billion-dollar effort to replace its aging Victoria-class fleet with up to 12 advanced conventional submarines. The new boats must be able to stay submerged under Arctic ice for over 3 weeks straight, have an operational range of at least 7,000 nautical miles, have a land attack capability, and project power alongside partners and allies. The race for Canada's next submarine fleet has officially become a two-way battle. Germany's next-gen Type 212CD and South Korea's battle-ready KSS-3 Block 2. Yet, as the final selection date looms, this is a much bigger prize for Seoul than it is for Berlin. Why does South Korea need this win so badly? To understand why this win means so much to Seoul, we first need to look at Berlin. When discussing the CPSP, TKMS and German officials consistently emphasize two core points. First, they highlight a massive, decades-long record of exporting submarines, and in many cases, building them entirely on foreign soil. For TKMS, international sales are business as usual. So while the Canadian project is both lucrative and strategically vital, it's also a standard practice for them. After all, this is the same company that exported the Type 209 and 214 technology to South Korea decades ago. Second, the German pitch focuses entirely on alliance frameworks. The Type 212CD is already a joint venture between two key NATO members, Germany and Norway. Adding Canada to the mix creates an instant trilateral ecosystem where all three nations can pool resources and leverage familiar operational networks. In other words, a Germany-Norway-Canada submarine family transforms an isolated procurement into a massive 24-boat alliance, streamlining shared logistics, training, and collective defense under the NATO umbrella. South Korea, meanwhile, has spent recent decades building a massive industrial shipbuilding empire and operating a formidable submarine fleet of its own. Yet, when it comes to exports, Seoul has only ever managed to sell submarines to one nation, Indonesia. And to put it mildly, that campaign left a bitter aftertaste for both sides. Stalled payments, performance disputes, and a frozen second batch contract effectively halted South Korea's momentum, leaving its naval export ambitions restricted to a single complicated relationship. This highlights the fundamental difference between the two bids. Unlike the KMS, Hanwha isn't fighting to maintain its status as a premier submarine exporter. It's fighting to become one. When you analyze their approaches to Canada, that distinction changes everything. As the established market leader, Germany operates with absolute institutional confidence. But Hanwha, the ambitious new challenger, is fueled by sheer industrial hunger. One is fighting to keep a legacy, the other is fighting to write one. But this isn't just a corporate hustle. The entire South Korean defense industrial complex is shifting gears. With Western defense budgets exploding, Seoul is aggressively positioning itself as a primary arsenal for NATO. They have already locked down massive land contracts across Europe, but they are eyeing a far more dominant role. CPRI data reveals South Korea is already the number 2 weapon supplier to European NATO allies, right behind the US. Winning in Canada is the exact catalyst South Korea needs to permanently secure its spot among the top tier of global defense power. That's exactly why securing Canada's submarine program would be a historic breakthrough for Seoul. Submarines are highly classified 40-year industrial marriage. If a NATO member like Canada trusts South Korea with its underwater deterrent, it erases any remaining doubt for the rest of the alliance. This validation is something Seoul desperately needs right now. Just recently, South Korea lost to Sweden in Poland's high-stake submarine race. For them, Canada gives a redemption shot to break the European monopoly and prove its naval ecosystem can compete at the highest level. It's no secret that Seoul's expectations for the Canadian project are astronomically high. The South Koreans have pulled out all the stops, launching an unprecedented industrial charm offensive, from deploying an active-duty submarine to British Columbia to signing multi-billion-dollar energy and automotive manufacturing partnerships. They are visibly completely all in, which means a defeat here will be an incredibly bitter pill to swallow. While defense cooperation between Ottawa and Seoul would undoubtedly survive if Hanwha lost, the momentum would break. Bilateral ties wouldn't stop, but it would move at a much slower, far more cautious pace. The core concern, however, is history. Canada and Hanwha simply don't have a deep institutional track record, meaning a South Korean victory would inevitably trigger a significant learning curve. What the Germans offer is immediate structural familiarity. TKMS stands as a proven known quantity within the alliance, a default NATO option. Partnering with Berlin certainly brings its own procurement challenges, but it also delivers absolute certainty, a dependable sovereign capability backed by a submarine platform that two other NATO navies are going to integrate into their fleets. Choosing South Korea means Canada is jumping into a brand new bilateral relationship with no safety net. Neither side is accustomed to doing business with the other. In a project of this scale, that total lack of shared history is a recipe for operational friction, cultural misunderstandings, and unpredictable budget strain. This isn't just an abstract anxiety. We have seen this exact movie before. When Australia partnered with France for the ill-fated C-1000 program, deep cultural clashes, soaring costs, and constant communication breakdowns derailed the entire contract, ultimately leading to its dramatic cancellation. Ottawa knows these stakes all too well. It's exactly what breeds deep hesitation and political risk aversion as contract negotiation loom. Ultimately, defense officials must weigh whether the strategic rewards of the South Korean bid outweigh the inherent vulnerabilities of handling Canada's largest naval project in a generation to a market newcomer. For South Korea and Hanwha, the CPSP is an era-defining must-win campaign. Having already established themselves as a dominant global powerhouse in land systems, Seoul is now seeking to enter a high-end naval market. Winning the CPSP will seamlessly validate South Korea as a Tier 1 naval exporter, shattering Europe's historical monopoly on conventional submarines. Securing a signature from a NATO member like Canada provides the ultimate certificate of technological trust and erases any remaining doubt for the rest of the alliance. To force this historic breakthrough, the South Koreans have launched an unprecedented charm offensive, like investment in Canada's domestic steel, automotive, and green energy sectors, essentially offering to anchor their own supply chain into the wider Canadian economy. Yet, Hanwha's greatest obstacle isn't the competition. It's the complete lack of bilateral history between Canada and South Korea. Because Ottawa and Seoul have no deep institutional history of managing high-consequence naval programs together, entering a decades-long strategic marriage introduces a massive leap into the unknown. Now, as the selection deadline looms, the entire trajectory of South Korea's global defense empire rests on Ottawa's decision. A victory would instantly launch Seoul into the elite top tier of global military supplier. A loss, however, would be an incredibly bitter pill to swallow. What do you think of the South Koreans' chances of winning in Canada? Is this campaign theirs to lose? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching everyone. I'll see you in the next one.